It took him, I think, approximately over 7 years to start becoming a consistently profitable trader and making a career from trading. Some stages he'd been stopped out, not being able to trade on the price ladder. He had to trade through some other means. He's a trader that is incredible at providing knowledge. Between the Sphinx and the Warrior, we're the pioneers of expanding outside the mold of being one or two market trading futures trader. And so my question is, how far can this trader go? He has trained his creativity and his ability to accept the market for what it is.
Disregarding what you think the truth is, just doing what the market truth is, understanding that to perfection, and then theoretically, you have your perfect trader. Techniques, methods, news trading, profile, putting all of this together, making it yours, making it new, allows for something beautiful and unique to emerge.
2 words, right? Traders becoming. Bogdan, so now I'm going to be speaking about the final chapter. And it's an Egyptian god. I think it's an Egyptian god, the Sphinx. And I know you took incredible intellectual delight in this chapter as well, which, I want to explore. But this is a trader who hustled his way to becoming a 7-figure trader. What I mean by hustled his way, it took him, I think, approximately over 7 years to start becoming a consistently profitable trader and making a career from trading. And so during that entire journey, his early days, he had to write reports in order to receive monthly money just so he can trade. Some stages, he'd been stopped out, not being able to trade on the price ladder. He had to trade through some other means. So many times, he also didn't have it his way. But this is also a trader that on the floor, the first floor in London, he's been there for a long time now. He's a trader that is incredible at providing knowledge to traders. Incredible, like insight, knowledge, nuanced knowledge, market narrative. He's probably also the pioneer of developing narrative from formerly Twitter, now X. He was the one that you could see he would find these novel underlying market narratives of why this should move the Dow Jones, why this should move the South African Rand, why this should move the Korean Won. He was just incredible at finding the subtle. Now, again, he was someone who would provide exceptional amounts of knowledge. But my challenge for this trader to truly realize his potential is his ability to receive. He can provide knowledge on a floor, and he's instrumental to the growth of the London first floor, especially when themes are kicking off. He's the warrior's clutch. And we've spoken on the Warriors chapter. The warrior, there's this organism, this single organism, this symbiosis that just occurs, from where you're sitting now and myself, I'm the warrior, you're the Sphinx. And they have some narrative umbilical cord linked to each other. And so when the markets are gyrating and moving, the warrior in his Greek accent says, "What do you think of that, Sphinx?" Says, "I think it's big." Warrior's clicking away. He says, "It's not so big." Warrior might still click away, but maybe not as aggressively. Warrior just needs to click. And there's a deep mutual respect, a love for each other, and they've navigated multiple themes skillfully over many years now. And they go back together to being the pioneers of trading in the days when you were just a Bund or Eurostox outright trader. You never ventured into other markets. These were traders that traded the Bank of Japan for the first time out of any futures traders back in 2012 and 2013. And they were potentially, between the Sphinx and the Warrior, were the pioneers of expanding outside the mold of being one or two market trading futures trader. And with the Sphinx is a trader that if he could receive inputs the way he provides output, he will truly have this incredible black box system that he could trade. Because a black box system, the only input is himself, and he provides the output for the team, whereas there's no arrow coming into him. At least there's a little bit of a wall, because he's also an intellectual powerhouse, maths degree at a very good university in London. And so my question is, how far can this trader go, given if he were to have an input into his black box way of trading? what does the Sphinx mean to you, and who is this? Why would someone want to read the Sphinx?
The Sphinx is the kind of person where you'd ask him a question as we interviewed him, and he would reply with 3 questions back to you. Hence his alias, and hence why himself is truly, like, personality-wise, person-wise, he truly is a black box as well. A very interesting character, very, I think, someone who likes to, the type to hide their perceptiveness and intelligence by just being sarcastic, perhaps too sarcastic sometimes, and will just deflect your questions with a shoulder shrug, and so on.
Or deflect your compliments of him.
Yes, yeah. He shifts strangely when you compliment and doesn't know how to react. But indeed, in regards to now here you've asked a very complex question, Alex, about who should read this chapter, because it ties into the very central premise of the heart of the book, meaning if you understand everything we try and do as a human trader, why we are doing it, and understand the very nature of markets, to understand the how, you also have to understand the why. And that is what this chapter really gets at. It is the last chapter, seemingly. I'll drop a little hint there. I will explain no further. It is, if we land the airplane, shall we say, in the previous chapter with the Voyager, chapter 12, and you've been building up all these ideas that the book has entertained you with, that you found extremely helpful with, that you've been building up yourself, the Sphinx then is a baseball bat to everything you've just been building up so far, because it gets across one of the many points, but one of the key points is this, as we put it right on the back of the book, permanence is permanent recreation. It is the reminder that no matter how much you've built up and understood in your career, you've received input from others, it is extremely useful, but you have to make it your own, and you have to distill it, and you have to break it down continuously. You have to maintain a sense of wonder, which is the power of the Sphinx, I think. You can see it the way he is just obsessed with markets. He regards it as the most wonderful thing that has existed on this planet. And he approaches it through a level of questioning that I think old traders sometimes, well, all traders must have, but I think a lot of the time traders lose. Questioning in the sense of having this inner ability to hold to conflicting ideas and navigate them, This ability where you're constantly, like we see it with the engineer, auditing yourself. Maybe auditing is another word we can use for questioning. And I think a lot of traders lose it, and it's very difficult because you then end up building all these abstractions in your head, which might be relevant, maybe not, and you have to purify it. And so this Sphinx is someone who, Alex, we begin with the razor, the bare bones, the fundamentals. We build it up to very highly applied things through, for example, the warrior and the engineer, news trading, and then the market profile, and very applied tactics throughout the middle of the book. And then we return to something even more fundamental, even more pure. It is not only the fundamentals of what makes a trader, but just the nature of the markets themselves, and to take another look. And we see a lot of these ideas right even before chapter 1. We see them in the introduction. And then we tie it all together at seemingly the end of the book. And the introduction goes as follows. Why think metagame? We see this idea that the more simple rules there are in a domain, the more complex behavior emerges. So now I'll say that again. The more simple rules there are in the game or in a domain that you operate in, the more complex behavior develops, which sounds counterintuitive, but this is the nature of the markets, where counterintuitive ideas are par for the course. If you deal in a domain or a game that has extremely long list of prescribed rules and things that you cannot do, the emergent way to play that gameplay, can only evolve so much. There's only so many permutations it can have. There's only so many ways it can evolve. When there's only few rules and near limitless actions, and the fact that you're playing it with many participants who can adapt to your actions in turn, means that the game will continuously evolve. Meaning, when you have a game that can look at itself, it can be self-referential, and then each participant can only think about the game, but think about you thinking about the game, and then think about thinking of the game, which we can reduce to metagame. Then you have the craziest ultimate game there is, the domain of financial markets. And that has deep implications. That has quite literally shattering the theater stage of the book that we've been inside so far and breaking out of those bounds and going even further to talk to you, the person reading the book, and it's a very meta chapter. To look outside the confines of what we do and to realize everything we've been talking about in the book comes back to this, essentially. So let's go a bit deeper. And again, it gets extremely deep in the last chapter, so I will not, we have limited time and the book will best served for all these details. But I said the word emergent gameplay, the word emergence. That is an extremely important word, emergence. Emergence is a feature of a complex environment. We said this before in other videos, and it comes up in many, many chapters. We discussed it in the nature of AI and rules-based thinking, algorithmic kind of thinking. The markets are not a financial problem, not an engineering problem to solve, not a problem to solve. They are an environment to navigate because they're a complex environment and not a complicated environment. That is pertaining complex, this study of complexity science, something that's only been relatively studied and developed on a relative scale quite recently for us to understand that you cannot approach a complex domain, like, for example, a weather system, a weather pattern, the same way one could understand in breaking down a bicycle. To put down a seemingly complicated bicycle, tear it apart and put it back together again, can be solved in a linear way. You can do it better through computational power, repetition, iterations that can be improved. When you apply these things to a complex domain that is forever shifting and changing and warping in a non-linear fashion, that is a recipe for disaster. And the problem starts that traders approach markets thinking they are a bicycle, when in fact it is more of a rainforest, as we said before. Meaning, and let's understand what is a complex environment. Non-linearity is in fact the norm, where once-in-a-lifetime events can happen sometimes monthly, and when they happen monthly, they happen right after next to each other. Adaptive interaction between agents, i.e. the prisoner's dilemma, or you reacting to what I do and you react to me in turn. Spontaneous pattern making, like for example, you might see with flocks of birds or schools of fish. And all of these, indeed, to have all these things, one crucial thing you must have is also, again, the emergence, where if you put all the component parts together in a system, in a complex environment, you get something extra which you could have never predicted beforehand. So I'll say that again. If you put all the parts of a system together like a bicycle, you can predict what it will be, a bicycle. If you put the frame, the chains, the wheels together, it's going to be a bicycle. It's not going to turn into some random apparition mechanical structure. If you put the component parts of a dynamic, complex system together, you'll always be surprised.
It's like particle physics with clouds,
yes,
right?
Yes,
and weather.
Yes, and the weather system is a perfect situation for this. In fact, looking at weather systems itself is actually one of the foundation elements of understanding chaos theory and complex system through Evan Lawrence and so on. But I will not go down that route in this very short video. Yes, you're right. So we have our complex system. It cannot be crudely divided, like we always say. You can't crudely be reductive and call markets from a technical perspective, from a fundamental perspective. You can't simplify them. So the sum of the parts are greater than the whole. In an individual, we can say that is talent. Whatever makeup you have, there's some unpredictable factor that gives you the talent. In a system like financial markets in a complex environment, the sum of the parts is greater than the whole, meaning you'll always be surprised about what that outcome is. And surprise is what breaks the systems, rules-based, inductivist, sample set thinking trader. Lo and behold, the complex environment can also be very static and trick you into thinking that it is static and it can be calculated and it can be trained with a sample set. But again, the market will always come calling.
Well, Bogdan, sorry, just with regards to chaos theory and complexity and these emergent properties, and the human element,
yes.
We spoke with Angus Fletcher, the ability to spot exceptional information.
Yes.
And so these emergent, unpredictable properties that are these resultants when all of a sudden there's a certain butterfly effect in the natural ecosystem, or a butterfly effect that completely changes the direction of the weather. A human, or whether you're a shaman, who's able to spot these novelties that no machine can spot.
Yes.
And therefore that is one of our gradings of intelligence and trading intelligence, is the ability to spot exceptional information.
Trade sense.
And so you have these two forces of chaos, emergent, human, observe, exceptional information. The two of those co-join, and all of a sudden those were the emergent of edge.
Exactly. And this is why when you ask me what this chapter is for everyone, I hope that on some level, everyone here listening who's traded before, who's seen markets before, perhaps you've learned that the financial markets are an engineering problem to be solved, and that's the way you've learned it at university and so on. All these things, by them practicing in the markets, you may have observed these same kind of qualities, you may have seen them, you may have understood them at some level, and it's truly making these things explicit, but for a practitioner first, meaning that for you to understand why you must do all these things like evolving, changing, doubling down on your human edge to remain creative, why you're doing this in the first place is to really be explicit about the true nature of markets. And again, that's what chapter 13 is, the Sphinx chapter. We utilize his character, it dovetails into all these topics. So when you're dealing with the nature of complexity, emergent gameplay, thinking about the game, novel information, what is the one thing you can always stand on? Creativity. So do you see how we seeded these ideas in the Warriors Part 2 in the book, for those who have access to it now and in the future? We seeded this, and now we're bringing it full circle in the Sphinx's chapter. So that is how you navigate our domain. Again, it gets much deeper because we look about this seemingly paradoxical self-referencing market. We utilize Soros's famous reflexivity, where we deal in a world where future prices, future actions of the market guide us today, but we create those very same future actions.
I mean, and that's in line with Angus Fletcher,
Yes.
And that's then again the source of creativity and creativity training. Drawing back to the Sphinx now, and your metaphor of how he has trained his creativity and his ability to accept the market for what it is.
Yes.
One of his most famous expressions is, "It is what it is," regardless. But one of the other truly remarkable aspects on his evolution and his development has been the way he digests the loss. It's one of the most powerful and profound observations of any of our traders, along with the engineer, of how they digest loss. But when you see him, and he's just taken a big hit, he doesn't carry, or very little, emotional baggage into the next session. And he has his own philosophical views of how he views life. Everything is how we interpret through our imagination and through our mind. And he's become rather philosophical of what is a loss, what is win. So he doesn't oscillate emotionally between losses and wins. So he can remain equalized, facing and entering a trade, regardless of what came before. A huge win came before. What is a win? What is a loss? And he becomes super hyper meta-philosophical on many aspects of how we just interpret life. And so the Sphinx is your Egyptian philosopher, your Greek philosopher. And I know there's one of the market wizards, there was a wonderful, one of the market wizards studied Sanskrit. And some of the Eastern, Taoist and Taoist, philosophers, Josh Waitzkin, integrated his Western philosophy of high performance and his Eastern practices of martial arts. And drawing across these disciplines is a trader who is by nature curious with his own research.
Yes.
And that's why I feel there is potentially that wall on the floor, because he just wants to be curious in his space. And that curiosity feeds his core game of trading, because he does have a very wide spectrum of interests. And now what's going to be fascinating in watching his journey with a young family, because whenever a trader has a family, how do they transition to the next stage where all of a sudden as a bachelor, you don't have those free weekends to yourself where you can just reflect. Because now there's no reflection, it's just action, looking after your children. That's all action, all weekend. And this is also an interesting dynamic. We've had throughout, chapter of, we have many fathers, I think, in the book now.
There's now more fathers and families than there are bachelors.
Especially on the London first floor.
Yes.
Yes.
Now it's pushchairs and nappies and not parties and fast cars.
And what's incredibly fascinating with that is seeing how the ones who have been able to embrace that have pushed on even further. speaking of the student. But the Sphinx, one of the aspects for me, what I would want every trader to learn from, is also his ability to view a loss or a profit as just inner conversations in your mind of how you interpret that perspective.
Yes, and it stems from, I think, something that becomes very apparent in his chapter, and which is why I mentioned how we return to the fundamentals. And again, who is this chapter for? It is also for those, as we said for the razor, for those who think that they maybe feel like they've overcomplicated their trading, they don't know where they're going, they've entered that messy period of knowledge accumulation, and they don't know a way out. When you speak to the Sphinx and you get so meta, it feels like, why are the markets so complicated? Why are they so, or, I should use that word complicated much more carefully in the context of this. Why are they so difficult? Why are they so whatever? When you speak to him, you think, you just end up with why, ? But essentially, he whittles down his craft. Okay, when you really push him, he'll tell you, I trade themes and flow, nothing else. But he truly means that, meaning that he just said, if I understand what the market truth is of what it really wants to do and do nothing else but that, and I trade with it, then everything else is taken care of. Now that is much more profound when you really sit and think about it, because if you ask him all these questions, for example, okay, how do you manage risk in your trade? How do you do all these things? Especially you can tell from the way a younger trader might ask much more reductive and specific questions, and it all just comes back to, well, if you do what the market does, then it just takes care of itself. Which is frustrating if you, in a term, if you really want some tangible,
when you're looking for frameworks,
tactics,
process,
yes.
mental models.
But again, you are, as a beginner, trying to apply a very reductive nature. We've been trained in school like this. We've just imagine you're a fresh, young graduate, high school, university. You've been brought up in a system where there's always right answers. There's always, in whatever domain there is, you just have to unlock the skeleton key and the world is yours. Doing that approach to trading is a recipe for disaster. And again, why? And maybe we know this implicitly, that chapter makes it explicit. And it all comes back to just, if you do what the market does, everything's taken care of. So it's understanding is this questioning nature, not in the sense of cynicism necessarily, but it's a way of working upstream. And again, that word, upstream. This book is all about thinking upstream, rather than asking downstream questions of, okay, how do I do this? How do I do that? Okay, what about this indicator? What about that indicator? Think more upstream. What are you really trying to achieve? More meta, more high level. Understand the nature of the game you're trying to deal with, and you really feel that with the Sphinx. He just said, it's just letting all these observations, and he's a very prime observer as well. Letting all these observations of the market, price ladder, flow, all this news coming into the market, hitting this strange organism that is the financial markets, and observing and learning it and understanding what the market truth is, disregarding what you think the truth is, just doing what the market truth is, understanding that to perfection, and then theoretically, you have your perfect trader, which cannot exist, but you try and get as close to that as possible.
And to finish off with this chapter, and for me with all these chapters, is the ability to see what happens in the long run. And for me, for the Sphinx, is a trader that approaches the markets, you mentioned, shattering a few beliefs at the end.
Yes.
In the last chapter, is a trader who doesn't attribute frameworks, processes, systems, practices, all kind of modern day performance training and psychology, as opposed to someone who just effectively maybe becomes more of an Eastern practitioner of, I become one, I am the market, I am a part of the market, I am market. And so seeing these divergent approaches, where does that take him in the long run? And that will be for Traders of Our Time, part 2. And that, for me, from a performance coach perspective, I'm most interested in. Because the journey for myself on developing and training the best-in-class futures traders on the planet is I'm always checking in my dogma, my understanding, what is changing, how we remain dynamic, how we move away from staticism, how we evolve, adapt, why we keep on working with outside expertise, and our current one being Professor Angus Fletcher. He's written the book on creativity. So this is my big observation point now, or having this distant eye on, let's see where his path takes him. Potentially nothing that I completely subscribe to, but that's where I love the emergent, where I love to be surprised, where does he become the outlier that then we regress him to the mean, and this now becomes a new exceptional piece of training. And so he has some philosophical ideas of the market, but it would be fascinating to see where his journey takes him without process, without practices, without debriefs, but pure on curiosity and the love of the market.
And let me finish off something, Alex, from my side, and to all viewers who've joined us on this amazing video series. So thank you for that, Alex, and we will read it in the book. You said the word just now, and we have before, emergent. I recall I cast my memory to when we talked with the engineer. We talk about this in his chapter. We asked him, when was the it moment? That moment where you became a profitable trader and everything fell into place. And he looked at us very confused. He's like, what do you mean it moment? Or something to this effect. There is no it moment. It just all sort of comes together. That is the true process of emergence of a trader. That is to become a trader. There's no like on-off switch. There's no skeleton key. There's no problem-solving ability there's no one formula you just solved, or like a secret that you just pulled out from somewhere, and or the secret indicator, the secret trade, the secret cabal of profitable traders to give you access to their inner circle. It's you slowly emerge. You're a culmination of all these data points, all these tractable things from the collective we, the power of environment around you, the power of learning from peers, the experts, all these multifaceted techniques, methods, news trading, profile, putting all of this together, making it yours, making it new, allows for something beautiful and unique to merge, and then power to that emergent trader.
2 words, right?
Yes.
What are those 2 words?
Permanent recreation.
And the other 2 words, which were potentially going to be the name of the book, Traders Becoming.
Yes. That was, in fact, the title before Traders of Our Time, Traders Becoming.
What you just summarized there is that there was no it moment, it was just becoming. And I think we shall end here on Traders of Our Time. Traders of Our Becoming was the initial. Tradersofourtime.com to get chapter 1, to have a complete feel of the writing, the historic moments for the birth of Axia, and this incredible team of 7- and 8-figure traders that have changed the very nature of what performance means in the global futures market. These are traders that have pioneered performance in an age of so-called machine. These are traders that have changed the path of many traders and enriched what's possible in the London and European futures market. These are traders that have influenced traders across the pond in the USA. Traders of Our Time is a book that's been so many years in the making to capture the stories of 10 wonderful, great traders, the learning practices, the systems, whether there's complexity, some simple approaches. Tradersofourtime.com, chapter 1. You're able to read it right now.
Alex, thank you so much.
Thank you, Bogdan.